I'm Captain Jip Mosman, Commander of Puget Sound Naval Shipyard and Intermediate Maintenance Facility. There have been a lot of questions lately about COVID, the concerns, what our workforce is thinking, they're feeling, and I want to make sure that I'm transparent and tell you what I do know. So joining me today is Mike Irby. He's our Production Resources Manager. Mike and I are going to spend some time. Mike's going to ask me some questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. What do you think, Mike?
Thanks for having me here today, Captain. So when I get out on the waterfront and I talk to our folks out on the waterfront, the biggest question I get from folks is, why should I get the vaccination when you can still get COVID after you have the vaccination?
That's a great question, Mike. And let me first say I am not a doctor. But what I do know about the vaccination is statistics have shown that folks that do get the vaccination have lower transmission rates. They also do not get as sick if they have the vaccination and they do catch it. Because no vaccination is 100% effective. There are bound to be some breakthrough cases that are called where people do get sick. But those that have the vaccine do not get as sick and they do not transmit it as much.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that response, sir. And you mentioned folks don't get as sick, so why wouldn't natural immunity be cause for not receiving the vaccine?
It's a great question, Mike. First of all, the mandate does not allow for natural immunity to be a reason for exception. And if somebody gets sick with COVID, it could be a mild case, it could be a severe case, it could be one strain, another strain. So natural immunity is not necessarily as broad and as effective as actually getting the vaccine.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation, sir, and I think that'll help our folks get educated on what the right thing to do is in regards to the vaccine. So another question that I've heard quite a bit is, if we don't get the vaccine, are we going to get fired? What are your thoughts on that?
Mike, I can't say with 100% certainty that someone's going to be fired or not going to be fired. Currently, if the mandate states that the person does not meet the deadlines to get vaccinated, then at that point, disciplinary process does apply. Now, what does that process look like exactly? That is still yet to be determined. We do not have the direction on that yet, but we know that every person owes due process, and especially with our bargaining units, we're working with the unions to understand and bargain what that's going to look like as we go through that process. So is somebody going to be fired November 23rd? No.
Yes,
But if they're not vaccinated, they haven't met the deadline, then they are subject to the disciplinary process.
Okay, thank you for that, Captain. I appreciate that. And you mentioned deadlines, so I know that our folks are really interested in what deadlines you're referring to, and what should we be tracking, our employees be tracking?
Great, yeah, there are a couple deadlines that are technically passed. The ones that are passed were to get the first shot of Moderna and the first shot of Pfizer, because that's a 2-shot series. The deadlines that are coming up are to get the second shot of Moderna or Pfizer, or the only shot for Johnson & Johnson, which is November 8th. That allows the 2 weeks post that second shot or only shot for Johnson & Johnson to become fully immunized. Also by November 8th, anyone requesting a religious or medical exception needs to turn that in by the 8th as well.
So, Captain, you mentioned the deadlines that our personnel need to be aware of. So what would be the process for personnel who wanted to request a religious or a medical exception?
For our employees who want to submit an exception, medical or religious, there are forms available. Those forms have the most information that we would expect to be needed to be considered. However, pretty much any request right now can be accepted. They can be given to the VAX mailbox, a resource officer, admin officer, or the EEO office. Once we have those exceptions, again, due November 8th, those exception requests, as they get to process, and we don't know exactly what that processing is going to look like, we expect that if there are questions, such as you didn't put enough information on your form, that we'll ask the employee to give us more information. And then there'll be a process. And again, I don't know the timelines, and I don't know who or exactly at what level that's going to be done at right now. But once we have that information, I'll be sure to share it.
Had a lot of concern about folks who are applying for exceptions. And if they were granted an exception, what would be the accommodation route for them? A significant amount of concern if they would be able to support shipboard work based on what the fleet consideration of the mandate would be. Do you have any additional information on that?
I don't, Mike. You're exactly right. I've heard the similar concerns. Could they travel? Could they go on board the vessels? What else is going to be required as an accommodation? I don't have that information yet. We are awaiting some guidance, which we expect fairly soon, to help us with that and help that with that understanding and share that with the workforce. But at this time, I really don't know what's going to happen.
Thank you for that clarification, sir. So we've also had many employees who feel that the vaccine mandate is a violation of their HIPAA rights. Can you further explain that to give us some clarity on that, please?
I've heard that same thing, Mike. And HIPAA really applies to healthcare facilities like hospitals or insurance companies. It does not apply to an employer, and it does not apply to the shipyard. That being said, we are subject to the Privacy Act. So any information we do collect from our employees, including such as vaccine status, would be considered under the Privacy Act, which means we have to protect it and have it secure storage for that information.
Thank you, sir. So we have seen an uptick in our employees that are getting the vaccine. What kind of coverage will be provided to our folks who receive an adverse reaction from receiving the vaccine?
Great question. So the Federal Employee Compensation Act, or FECA, covers employees who get an injury that is a result of the vaccine. So I get the vaccine today, I have an injury because of it, then I can file. Now the question has come up in the past, do I have to get it from the Navy? And the answer is no. After September 9th, any vaccine that was received, it could be out in town at Walgreens or a hospital or with the Navy, there is FECA coverage and the person would be able to file a FECA claim if they have that injury.
Captain, I've heard this question several times on the waterfront. If a person elects to resign or is removed from service, can they reapply for a job in the future?
It's an important question, Mike. First, I don't want to see anybody leave. But if they did, they're always open to reapply to government service. But right now, it's a little unclear what a resignation versus a removal would do for their opportunities to come back. So I just don't have that answer firmly at this point.
Yes, sir. So that was another question that we had. So the mandate of the vaccine is addressing the here and now, the mandate of the vaccine. So there's no guidance yet that folks are aware of if there's any annual boosters that would be required. Do you have any information on that?
I don't at this time. All of us have seen the CDC guidance about boosters are coming out, authorized right now for certain fields or age groups. I don't have any information. I haven't received any information that boosters are going to become mandatory or when they're going to be mandatory or if they're going to become mandatory. We'll be watching for that, and as that information does become available, I'll be sure to share it with the workforce.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And as you walk on the waterfront, you can just get the feeling from our folks that they're overwhelmed, they're anxious, they're really stressed out on the waterfront based on this vaccine mandate. Sir, what do you recommend that our employees do that can help them in this time of need?
That's a great question, Mike. And I do see that. I sense it. The emotions are high. People are angry. They're upset. This is tough decisions. Absolutely. I don't want anybody to be suffering. They need to talk to someone. We have resources here that our people can talk to. The Dawn CAP, the Civilian Employee Assistance Program, certainly we have command counselors they can talk to. I recommend they talk to their doctor, their pastor. There are many people they could certainly talk to. I don't want anybody to be suffering in silence on this one.
Thank you, sir. So Captain, there's a lot of trepidation amongst the folks on the waterfront that fear that based on the amount of personnel that we are possibly going to lose based on this vaccine mandate, that the folks who have elected to get vaccinated will be overburdened and overtaxed with the additional work as they feel that the fleet demand will not become less. What are your thoughts on that?
So Mike, our balanced command philosophy we have where we balance workload and workforce available is a balance, exactly that. And with, frankly, more workload potentially coming into this year and what we've just been talking about and a change to our workforce available, we really have to assess the workload and the workforce balance. And we have to make changes to maintain that balance. And once we work through those, we work with customers and we'll figure out what that looks like. But in no way should anyone assume that if they're vaccinated in here that they're going to work harder than they have before to make up for that imbalance that potentially might come. And we've had a lot of this discussion. We've been talking about really kind of the unvaccinated. For those our employees who are vaccinated, we want to say thank you and appreciate them too, to get that vaccination and continue the hard work that they're doing supporting our mission.
I just had a couple closing thoughts for you,
Sure.
Captain. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the voice of the employees, and I hope I represented that well today. I know that how much you value the employee, how much value they bring to what we do each and every day, and it is your wish that we could really limit the amount of folks that we lose, resign, away from our command. So as each and every one of us bring a vital piece to having a successful mission. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Mike, for asking those questions. And for all of you, our most valuable asset, that's you. And I know you're going to have more questions, and you have emotions and concerns about what's going to happen in the future. You want to know certainty. Believe me, I want to know that too. And as I get that, I will certainly share that with you. But I do want to say we must work together as a team, remain a team. We must respect one another, regardless of what our beliefs or concerns or perspectives. Until we get all the answers, press forward, team.